Welcome back to the podcast, Heal Without Harm. I'm Dr. Clayton Dir, physical therapist, and the one bringing you the truth about the medical system. Today's guest is a physician and researcher who is doing something most doctors aren't even talking about yet, figuring out how to actually get toxic forever chemicals out of the human body. These chemicals are in your cookware, food packaging, drinking water, and likely even your own bloodstream right now as you listen to this. In the conventional medical system, it's barely paying attention. Today, Dr. James Seberger is going to change that, and I'm really excited to get into it. Dr. Seberger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Really generous of you. Thank you.
No problem. Real quick, before we actually dive into what forever chemicals are, is there a difference between microplastics and forever chemicals, or are we talking about one and the same?
They are very different.
Okay.
Yeah. So, microplastics are plastic. They have their own chemical properties. Forever chemicals are chemically created to have particular constituents on a carbon backbone. So they're actually smaller than microplastics. I mean, they're actual molecules.
Gotcha. So is there more that you would like to speak on what a forever chemical is, or
Sure.
is that it in a nutshell?
So there's generally two types of forever chemicals. The first are like stain-resistant greases, these molecules that are added to furniture. And they're, you would call them hydrocarbons, but the hydrogen's been replaced with fluorine.
Okay.
And then they have a reactive end that makes them hydrophobic. Okay.
Which means like scared of water or water repellent.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
So that's where we get the water repellent from.
Yeah.
And they'll have sulfur or phosphorus on this. And those kinds of chemicals are hard to break down. Whenever the body would look at that and call it a fat.
Okay.
And like, whoa, all this, is kind of general, but what a fat is chemically is a string of carbon molecules. And those carbon molecules will have hydrogen on them. And if all the carbon has hydrogen, then we would call that saturated.
Okay.
If there is like a double bond in a carbon, we would call that desaturated. So the omega-3s, it's desaturated at the third carbon. And omega-6s are desaturated at the sixth carbon.
Which are generally like the good fats that we want, right?
The good fats that we want, because they create, a bend in the fat that actually makes the cell have a different kind of membrane fluidity.
Okay.
But they also act and are incorporated as signal molecules. They're also used as energy-producing molecules. So you probably heard of fatty acids and triglycerides. So fatty acids have an O and an OH on this, and the three of those are combined with glycerol to make a triglyceride. And that is our common fat storage molecule. We break those down in a part of a cell called the peroxisome, and we break them down and we break them into 2 carbon units, and then we burn them. We combine them with oxygen, and we get H2O and CO2.
So pretty much we get energy, and then you have
energy.
Is the water and the CO2 there essentially the exhaust?
They're the exhaust.
Cool. So you breathe it out or pee it out.
Breathe it out, pee it out.
Cool.
And the problem with these forever chemicals that have fluorine there and other sort of inert molecules is our enzymes can't metabolize them very well.
We somewhat see them as like a fat, but then we're like, This isn't normal. What's going on?
Yeah. So they essentially gum up the system.
Okay.
And that's also part of the problem with vegetable oils. Some of them will not be able to metabolize by the peroxisomes.
Okay.
So they're affecting our energy processes. They actually can get incorporated into cells in terms of the membranes. And part of the energy production process is all done in mitochondria. And mitochondria then take these 2 carbon units and they'll make the backbone of cholesterol, which is the backbone of our hormones. So now we're getting into endocrine disruption. So we got these molecules that aren't easily broken down in nature, and they're gumming up different parts of our hormone production system and our energy producing system. The other type of forever chemical that we commonly speak of is the fire retardants. And these are ring-like structures that have like a benzene ring, or and the ring-like structure means they can absorb energy in terms of an electron, and they absorb energy.
Okay.
And you have, if you're on a plane, or you're in a vehicle and you're in a crash and it's on fire, you don't want to catch on fire.
Yeah.
So there's legitimate needs to have molecules that don't that aren't easily ignitable.
Yeah.
Furniture, for example, clothing, different things in houses. There's legitimate needs to not easily catch on fire. Problem is those ring-like structures resemble also our hormones. They resemble vitamin D. They resemble the thyroid system, and so they're impacting energy production also in the hormone system.
So when we talk about these, we've gotten into some details like way down at like the micro level.
Yep.
But people listening now, you've touched on, like you said, stains. Then you said essentially like furniture protection. So I'm thinking when I went and bought a new couch and they were like, look, I can pour red wine on here and it doesn't get it.
Yep.
So they're putting it there. Where are some other examples of everyday life that I may be coming in contact with forever chemicals and not even know?
So, foam in cushions.
Okay.
Right. So, believe it or not, the fire retardant levels are about 25% by weight.
Okay.
So these are not molecules that are in the tiny milligram amounts. These are like, okay, here's some fire treated foam. It's a quarter of it is fire retardant.
Wow.
And so these are large volume amounts.
So, I mean, I'm sitting on my couch with clothes on, though.
Yep.
And I'm also just touching it here and there. So, do I really need to be concerned becomes the question?
Yeah, well...
or how does it get passed, maybe, is my follow-up.
They're mostly inhaled.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So when they let's look at fire retardants in homes. They're it's dust.
Okay.
And so when people do these experiments, and there's one piece of literature that I cite where they looked at the fire retardants just in dust, and they used levels that we are exposed to all the time, and they exposed rats to these pregnant rats, and they really had problems with the generation of follicles in female rats.
Okay.
So they do cause reproductive issues. All right. So it is a problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard sometimes people talk about the air in your house is actually worse than the air outside, even though we once thought like, oh, but I have a filter, so it's going to clean this air. It's going to be better. Is this a piece of that argument on why outside's better?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think so.
With that being said, I was talking to Courtney, my boss, and somebody who's worked with you before, and he said some person in like high school or college like even made a filter to help with this issue. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I don't know about that filter exactly, but filtering is a good idea.
Okay.
I recommend, and it's always fair to say it depends.
Oh, for sure.
And not make an overbroad generalization. I was talking with a very famous environmental physician, Bill Ray, and I said, "What do we need?" And he says, "We need clean air."
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true, right? So we need clean air. And we should be the initial issue is just not have it.
Yeah.
Right? We should have safe products at home. We should not be worrying that we have to filter our air. I think in the present day we need to filter our air, we need to filter our water. Right? Just basic filters, right? And most HVAC systems were changing the filters. I think, there's also arguments that are emerging. I was listening to a podcast with James Nestor, and he was talking about CO2 levels. And we're like, we actually need windows. We need to be outside. We need fresh air. I think that's all true.
Yeah. So I think where my kind of question comes in is, so we're coming into contact with these forever chemicals that potentially weren't weren't something that was present how long ago? 50 years ago? 100 years ago?
So it's a rise of chemistry. The initial forever chemicals were first synthesized in the 1940s as PCBs. And so these are polycyclic brominated molecules.
What was an example of that?
They were made as insulators for conductors.
Okay.
And so when you would see a large cylinder on a pole, right, that was handling high voltage current, if you were to open that up and unscrew the top, you'd find conductors, and inside those conductors would be a liquid and would look like oil. And those would be pure synthesized PCBs that were designed to distribute any electrical charge that came off accidentally. They're designed to cool that conductor.
Okay.
And perfectly legitimate need.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is they don't break down.
Yeah.
And they're fat soluble.
Okay.
So that type of molecule, and there's been lots written about that. They would load 50-gallon barrels and go out 50 miles from the coast and just throw them overboard.
The whole barrel?
The whole barrel.
Man.
Yeah, and there's places in California that they've gone and they've gone down recovery vehicles and they've looked and they're like, how are these barrels?
Yeah, really.
And the question is, what should we do with them now? Because we didn't really appreciate their foreverness.
Yeah.
We didn't really appreciate their effects on wildlife. There's a really interesting book by Theo Colburn, who wrote a book in the 1990s called Our Stolen Future.
Okay.
And this book, with Dr. Patterson, who's now at Berkeley, actually coined the word forever chemicals. Okay. Endocrine disruptor.
Yeah.
Right. So Theo Colburn, in Our Stolen Future, really, she was getting her Ph.D. in pharmacy.
Okay.
And she documented at that time what the literature was showing in the 1980s, the harms of these chemicals.
Already. Like it's
already
been documented way back then.
So this is 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, we've had several orders of magnitude of documentation on some of the problems of these molecules.
Well, also the molecules are actually probably
correct. There's
10,000+ times worse. Like,
well, what I would say is
like there's more of it at least.
Well, what I would say is that Theo Colburn created recognition of the harms, and then these were phased out, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, it was actually, like, here's a problem, we need to deal with the problem, and these are bad things, and we stopped producing them. We created something else,
Gotcha.
And we worried about their disposal. And there's actual documentation able to measure. There's measures showing that they went down over the last couple of decades. Mm-hmm. Part of the issue is now we're looking at some other molecules, the stain-resistant molecules, and now we're like, oh, these guys are baddies.
Yeah, we just found a different flavor of bad.
Well, and then what happens with some of them is we actually outlaw them. And then industry creates a similar molecule, right? So the longer PFAS chemicals, 8-10 carbons, they've been replaced with smaller next gen, smaller carbon amounts that do similar things. And so really what we need to ban like this as a class. Like, don't make these. Don't just, change them molecularly, put different amounts of carbon and hydrogen, fluorine on them. We really need to ban them as a class. We cannot deal with this type of molecule.
We need like a bigger umbrella.
We need a bigger umbrella. Exactly.
So I think, especially nowadays, I feel like the social media I consume and the discussions I see having online, it seems like there's a lot of people that think there's somebody or some group of people that want us sick and painful and sick and hurting or sick and unhealthy. Mm-hmm. I'm an optimist, but I perceive it more as there's certain people trying to solve a problem however they need to. And then all of this unhealthiness is a byproduct. And then the government's like, hey, you can't do that. And we're like, cool, we won't. We'll go make this thing, which is pretty much the same thing, but different enough to bypass the law. And yes, it is hurting people, but they don't want to hurt people. They just want to profit and sell their thing and solve the problem.
Yeah, you look at people and sometimes they get trapped in what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I make this class of molecules that I'm good at. And I've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. Like, oh, I can't make those anymore. You've got to retool.
Oh, very much so.
Significantly retool.
And then there's a business that's probably lost their profits to be lost.
And there's, the history of brominated fire retardants, the Chicago Tribune, and in my PowerPoint, I don't go through it, but I have a slide on that.
Okay.
And there was a single company that made brominated fire retardants, and they were actually making additives to gasoline to reduce NOx, right?
What is that?
So NOx is a thing that happens when you burn fuel in an engine. I'm not a mechanical engineer, not an engineer in combustion, but we used to add lead to gasoline.
Okay.
And for a long time, that was phased out in the 1980s.
Okay.
And so we also changed the additive formulation that was government regulated. So we weren't making such bad air.
Okay.
Okay.
Secondary to the gas and stuff.
Correct.
It ends up becoming bad air.
Even worse.
Very, very bad.
Degrees of badness. Degrees of bad air. Like,
yeah.
And that's a fair thing to say. He's like, I'm in, there's, everything sort of has a cost. Electrical vehicles, okay, it takes energy to do that. There's pollutants with that. How do we manage that? How do we make a closed system with that? How do we change CO2 levels? I admit it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated. Do I want a clean world? I do. Do I like the things of modernity? I do. Do I want health? Do I want health? Yes. Do I want ill health? No.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that we'll always have some ill health? I do.
Yeah.
But kind of to go back to your point, I think. I don't think there's a general overall purpose. You can't go to a hospital and say, you guys have all created this disease. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
People come to us with this disease.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to change like people having fractures, gallbladders going bad. You might change the number of people getting cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You might change clearly metabolic disease and the disease that's happening with high blood pressures, and that is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. So what I would say is the system, and we're part of it, you and I. The system needs to spend some time and get paid some amount of money and create enough value to create health so that we don't have disease.
Yeah.
But if disease comes, if somebody comes and they had some bad bug from some bad food, hey, I can help with that,
mm-hmm.
right? There's strong medicine that will help that and maybe save a life, maybe save some kidneys. All reasonable.
You have to triage the bad while also trying to prevent the bad at the same time, for sure.
Yeah, that's actually the highest form. Right. Yeah. It's prevention of disease. And
looking upstream and saying like, wow, hold on, this is preventable.
Correct.
There's these people dumping barrels of stuff.
Correct. And we
did all of our stuff.
That was it. 50, 60 years ago, like, okay, here's our job. We have to get rid of this stuff. And we're just going to go dump it.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I think it's fair to acknowledge that a physicist or a chemist or whoever's making those things for like you said, the conductors, they don't think downstream because honestly, kind of why would you? That this chemical that you're making for this purpose is going to have 20 years from now killing all these people of lung cancer. It's like, who would have thought? You know, I get it. And sometimes there's sometimes where you create a product or create something that is solving a big problem. And I've observed that at least in America, maybe worldwide, it's I'm going to solve this problem, and then I guess we'll see if there's any side effects down the road, as opposed to let me prove that it's not going to do all these things before I put it into production.
What I would tell you is in Europe, they have a different standard. So Europe is, prove safe. Prove this is safe before actually going into it. And so it's a regulatory environment.
And here it's more.
And here it's it's prove harm.
It's probably safe unless you prove it's harmful.
Right. Well, and I would argue that some people are like, well, it's going to take some years. This is probably bad, but nobody's demonstrated that, so we're going to do it anyway. And we followed the law, and that's really disingenuous.
It is. And I even heard this one guy say, he's like, if you have a company that can make $10 billion off of something, and then 4 years later they have to pay a $500 million fine, that's called just overhead.
That's called business.
Yes,
right.
it's called, I'll take that bet every time.
Cost of business.
Pay $5 for $100 every single time, I'll take that. And that's like, okay, so the punishment isn't bad enough for like in what you entailed. And you already got your profits and moved on.
Yeah, well, think, I'm going to knock on popcorn now. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about, fire retardants, and we talked about their energy and how they distribute energy. So one place that they're purported to be.
Are you about to tell me that popcorn's killing you?
Yes. Yeah. So, my family, I've got 3 teenagers, and I'm like, you are not getting this microwave popcorn. You are not using these bags. You are, you're absorbing some of these chemicals as a food. Okay. And the kind of oil in there, I'm like, no. So I'm like, here is how you're making popcorn. And here's a pan.
Is it Jiffy Pop, the foil ones that you just set on your
Nope.
stove?
I just, right. Just remember, you get a little bag of popcorn, maybe from your scout troop. It's in a bag. It's just corn that's been dried. Yeah. Right. It works better if it's in the freezer. You get a pan, you pour some oil in it. You can choose the oil that you want. I choose a healthy oil, heat it up, it pops. Yeah. That's popcorn.
Yeah.
And that is better for you, okay, than this popcorn that's made in bags.
For sure. Okay. And it's more the bag that's the problem there, right?
Correct.
Not to say that you're microwaving, but that you're microwaving inside of a bag that has some of these chemicals.
Correct.
So one that you touched on a little bit ago, and I think this is what will catch a lot of people's attention, is I don't know what to think when it comes to vegetable oil, canola oil, hydrogenated vegetable oil. A lot of people online that I would say I trust when it comes to like social media doctors, they say, listen, like all of these vegetable oils are not near as bad as other people are saying, because when you look at the studies, it actually helps lower cholesterol, actually helps lower all these things. And people's blood labs will actually get better with these more, what I would call like industrial oils that we use for food. I feel like you're telling me something different, and I don't know what to believe as the consumer. And I think people listening may also not know who to believe. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I saw this. My mother's a dietitian, nutritionist. Okay. So I've grown up, right? My father's mechanical engineer. Get a biochemist out of that. That's what I am, right? So I think that it's reasonable to eat what nature makes. Okay. I don't think that our bodies are made to develop and metabolize things that are synthetic.
I would agree.
All right. I just like we don't handle bromine and fluorine very well. Okay. Iodine, we do for our thyroid. It's a special class. It's very important. That's why these brominated fire retardants and other chemicals are really impacting energy production. Okay. Because they're similar looking to what we naturally have.
Yeah.
But it's not what our body deals with. So for me, dehydrogenated vegetable oils, I'm concerned with, because I don't think the saturation process is perfect, and the desaturation process is also not perfect. And you're asking a lot of the dehydrogenases and our peroxisomes to metabolize these things. So we know that, right? We've done studies, and we see that these are a problem. Do I think olive oil, avocado oil, maybe some of the other seed oils are okay? I do. I think that sometimes we use them incorrectly. We heat them up and pass their smoke points, and we get to something that's really bad. I do. Okay. Do I think if we cook something, I remember when they showed this, the heterocyclized fats, and take a piece of bacon and you expose it to flame. The heterocyclated fats are very carcinogenic, and they cause double strand breaks in DNA. And I remember my graduate school years in the 1990s when somebody came from the National Cancer Institute, and they were just aghast at the number of double-strand breaks. I'm like, but we've been eating this for a long time. So what I would tell you is you should be careful. And the foods that we're eating actually then, and this is way off from brominated fire retardants and PFAS chemicals, but I sort of have an ecological view, right? Like we exist in this world with the resources and the foods that we have to live a certain time. And we will pay a penalty ecologically and then pathologically by disease processes when we go outside of that niche. Eat too much, eat the wrong things. Yep, I think we have a penalty. Ultimately, we have disease processes. Do I think we have buffering mechanisms for this? I think we do. Part of the problem with our disease processes is we're not exercising enough or creating enough of a buffer in terms of the nutrient foods that we need. And they might not even be available.
So to give some examples, you already said like swapping popcorn from microwaving it in the bag that it comes in and doing something where you're cooking it on the stove where it's just true heat and oil. It's not anything else kind of in there. What are some oils that you would say is probably the cleanest, safest, best choice out there if I do want to use oils for cooking?
So cooking, cooking to create heat, air fryer maybe.
Okay.
Right.
But I've heard the same argument there where it's like, but what if it has Teflon all over it and it's like,
I worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that air fryer going, thinking that too. So high smoke point oils like coconut and avocado are reasonable.
Okay.
Right. And then
also directly derived from nature.
Correct.
Going back to the other point.
Correct. And then olive oils at lower smoke point.
Which is somewhere in 400 degrees or something like that.
Yeah, you can't turn it on high and when you start getting smoke, like you're going too far.
You're chemically changing it, and then that becomes a problem.
And we do have a liver, right? And a liver does work to deal with a lot of these things right out of the gate, right? We eat food, it goes into the first part of the small intestine, the duodenum. It's absorbed in the neurohepatic circulation, and liver deals with it. Liver's a pretty remarkable organ. The problem is some of the chemicals are not metabolizable, are affecting the liver's function, and the liver needs a certain amount of nutrient in order to do its job. So we have nutrient poor, toxic, overburdened liver, we have an issue.
What would an example of that be?
Like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Gotcha, yeah.
Right. Just
which would normally be caught on a normal blood lab at that point, correct?
You'll start to see elevated liver enzymes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Very low. Normally are 30 to 40. You might start to see them 70, 80, or 100.
Okay.
Okay. And with time, then we get something called, the old name was NASH, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but now we associate with metabolic non-alcohol liver disease. And I would argue it may be the carbohydrate that we're eating that is actually fermented to alcohol, because when you look at everything under the pathological side, that looks exactly like alcohol disease.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you were kind of notioning towards, let's bring it back towards these forever chemicals and the fire retardants and things like that. You mentioned places that we may find them is in it sounds like anything that's insulated, whether it be a couch cushion, a stain resistant thing. I think on your PowerPoint that I saw, there is, of course, like your classic, fire extinguisher and things like that. Is there anything else that you would want someone to keep eyes out for that they could potentially just make little decisions in their home of getting rid of this and bringing in that?
So fire extinguishers, what I would say is some contain water, some contain CO2.
Okay.
And those aren't bad. It's the firefighting foams that have been used to put out fires by the military and by our services. And some of our most toxic places are military bases that use firefighter foams in decades past, and some of our most exposed people actually were those firefighters that were in the military and firefighters, civilian firefighters.
Yeah.
So that's an important consideration. When people look at, is this a problem? There's a couple of questions. You say, just because it's a horrible toxin, do we have exposure? And like, no, it's over there in this factory and we can get rid of it. Or it's a byproduct and we get rid of it. So you have toxins, but then you have to exposure, right? So these for the firefighters, these are people who that was part of their job. And there's lots of exposure to these chemicals.
I may never get exposed, relatively speaking, but they're doing it every third day of the week.
Correct. Now there are places in the country that have been identified, and my PowerPoint does have a map of that.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're in Kansas, have a map of that. And the Kansas Department of Health and Environment actually has gone out and assayed water, and they've actually assayed fish because it gets concentrated in fish. And that's part of the problem. And I've been to the water treatment plant, my little part of Wichita, and looked at that. And what they tell me is they're measuring, but the levels peak, right? Depends upon the outflow, depends upon industry dumping or the outflow of that industry. So it's periodic, it's not constant. And then it can get concentrated in sort of the remains of the waste disposal, and we call that leachate. And so that concentration is part of the issue, right? So it lasts a long time. These are fat soluble molecules, and they're working their way up the food chain.
Well, it sounds like, honestly, you're painting a pretty big nightmare of so I'm just somebody listening on my drive to work. What the hell am I supposed to do?
That's a great question.
Because it sounds like it's so high up that even you asking, the water treatment plant to observe it, it's like, okay, well, this is from blank, blank, blank that happened this many years ago, or this person way upstream doing this issue. We're just noticing that it's there.
Yeah.
So then what do we do?
So what I would say is we're all exposed. There's been significant legislation in the last 20 to 30 years that's taken out some of the real baddies. We have new generations coming that we need to pay attention to. It would be really reasonable to sort of, legislate or regulate this as a class of molecules. The second thing is, live a clean life, right? Look at your filters, look at the things that you're bringing into your house and your environment. Look at what you're eating, make decisions that are purposeful and intentional, okay? I have patients who are actually getting blood tests of these molecules, and they're at the safe level, okay? And that's been determined by a big committee of engineers and doctors at the national level, and they're looking at, maybe 20 nanograms per milliliter in the blood is where we need to be paying attention to, and can be questionable. Most of my patients right now are in the 2 to 4 nanograms.
So actually way down.
They're way down, and they're measurable.
Safe, they're at 10%.
Yeah, and one of the things that's also at the point of my PowerPoint is, is there a medicine that we can use to get rid of that?
Exactly, because first, do we need to worry about it? Can we measure it? Can we change it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the answer is it's present and we're exposed. Do I think it's a problem? Yes. Can we measure it? Yes. It's becoming a measurable thing. Can we do something about it? Yes. Okay. And what I would tell you is, cite the literature, it is tiny. Okay. So if you go to the National Center of Biotechnology Information, right? PubMed.gov.
Mm-hmm.
They have a database of the 50 to 100,000 articles per year, right? So it's a huge database. It's actually one of the searchable databases that's been trained in some of the AI programs. So they go to that database and they cite it when you ask a question. You say, list for me all the studies on brominated fire retardants or all the studies on PFAS. You'll have thousands of entries. Thousands, right? So we have good literature that shows that it's bad. If you go, okay, how do we treat it? And tell me all the studies that show effective treatment, it's less than 10, right? Most of the studies will show removal from the environment has a benefit. Okay, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
What are we going to do for the firefighters that have this exposure? We got it, and that's going to be cholestyramine. Right. Okay. So that's been a molecule and that would be like a central point that I'd like our listeners to come away with
For sure.
is like, is there, don't live in fear, be reasonable,
Live in awareness.
be live in awareness,
Yeah.
and can I take something to remove this?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Before we get into the removing, I think a lot of the times people think, well, my doctor would check that. Well, I get blood labs once a year.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that catch that? It sounds like, first of all, like there's less than 10 studies, which is practically none, relatively speaking,
for
to
removal.
thousands.
Yeah, removal. Yeah.
But how long ago did we even get a blood test to identify levels in the blood?
So a couple years ago.
Very recent, which I mean in medicine is like yesterday.
Correct.
It's very fresh.
Correct.
So how many doctors, I mean, I don't need a number, right? But like your classic blood panels, your CBC, whatever else the number, the other ones, your basic panels that insurance pays for.
CBC, CMP, fasting lipids. You might get
none of that
advanced lipid
stuff.
No.
Right.
You're gonna need to go to a laboratory that's actually measuring these.
Mm-hmm. Like, and you'd have to either seek it out or like find someone like yourself who's like looking into this stuff.
It's just become standard.
Okay.
Right. But I would also tell you, that we've been measuring them in something called the NHANES studies. So this is a big study of exposures that's performed about every 10 years. And they're like 97% of us have this. There's lots of this in cord blood. And so even before we're born, we have these exposures. They are acting as oxidants, and they're affecting methylation patterns in both mitochondrial and nuclear DNA. So they're epigenetically heritable. I would also say that they're probably synergistic. So whenever you do studies with, combinations, we find that they're more toxic than by themselves in studies. Do I think that they could lead to, they're clearly endocrine disruptors. That means, do I think they'll lower testosterone? Like, yes, they're clearly lower testosterone. Do I think they're affecting sort of folliculogenesis in women and affecting fertility? I'm like, yes, I think they are.
Yeah.
Do I think they're affecting brain function? I think yes. Do I think they're affecting energy effects through the thyroid system? Like, yes. Do I think they're affecting energy utilization through peroxisomes and mitochondria? Yes.
So do you feel like this is almost compounding? Like, if my mom, who had me in the early 90s, passed on some of these flavor chemicals, then I grew up and I'm continuously getting exposed. I now have a child.
Yes.
Like, we're just giving essentially giving our children bigger doses to start with.
That's exactly what I think. There's 20 years ago, there was a nice study done in the New England Journal of Medicine. So nothing crazy about that journal. It's pretty stodgy, hardcore medicine, right? New England Journal of Medicine. And the senior author, Dr. Patterson, showed that we're inheriting methylated changes on our DNA in terms of methylation patterns from mother to child. Okay. And this was correlated with obesity.
Okay.
And what the importance of this is like, where is obesity coming from? I was like, it's coming from a lot of the environment, and it's being inherited epigenetically. That is, it's not a genetic change that works on our fitness levels and our reproductive levels over long periods of many generations. Epigenetics means that it's happening on one generation to the very next. And what I would argue is, look at the size of your grandmother, then look at the size of your mother, and look at the size of you. We're getting larger.
Mm-hmm.
We're clearly gaining weight.
Where if you fed that person a similar diet alongside the environment, it may impact that third generation more than impacting the first.
Correct. And there's actually a sort of famous epigenetic book called Pottinger's Cats. And that I would encourage people to read Pottinger's Cats. It speaks to this epigenetic phenomena. It's a really interesting story. Do you have time for that? Pottinger's Cats?
Go for it. And then after this, I want to go back. So you'll catch the blood test, and then what do you do about it is where we'll lead to next.
Okay. So Pottinger's Cats is a fascinating story. It starts with there was a physician. His job was to dose adrenal gland. Okay, so people who have a problem with their adrenal gland, and probably the most famous is John F. Kennedy. They had to take adrenal gland, and so this is going back medically 80, 90, 100 years. But in the 1930s. A man named Dr. Pottinger, his job was to figure out the dose of the adrenal gland taken from cows to give to people. And so the way he figured out the dose of the different adrenal gland concentrations, the different glandules he got from the pharmaceutical manufacturer was dose cats. And he would take the adrenal gland out of the cat. And so he actually was also a cat breeder.
Yeah.
And so what he recognized is if you gave the cats cooked milk and cooked food, they degenerated. And it was only a couple generations. And the degeneration was in coat length, coat color, coat quality, craniofacial abnormalities, dentition, and reproduction.
So I just want to say this back to you. So through breeding the cats and watching generations of cats go down, if they cooked their milk and cooked their food, they actually got worse genetics along the way.
Correct. So they were epigenetically modified. And we have since identified the cooked thing as benzopyrene, which cats cannot do well with.
They essentially can't process it.
They're not. They didn't ever evolve with cooked stuff.
Okay.
Right. So they need to eat raw. Right. But what was important is the cats' reproduction rate went down. They would have litters, 8 to 10, then 6 to 8, and 4, and then nothing. And so they really, the food that they were eating was leading to their extinction.
Like quite directly.
Over very quickly, multiple generations.
Yeah.
Right. I've outlined, I think it's happening to us, actually.
Yeah.
Right. I've outlined a book to write because I think it's actually really critical that we understand the effects of these chemicals, because there's epigenetics this is how they're affecting us, is epigenetic modification. Obesity is in many cases a result of this.
I was going to say, I believe. Is obesity a byproduct or is it a cause?
I think it is.
Like a byproduct. It's just another representation.
I think it's, and my interpretation of obesity is short-term gain for long-term cost. So when you're a larger person, your fitness level goes up. You're able to grab more resources. But we've observed since the 19th century an inverse relationship with size and longevity. So the larger you are, the shorter your life. All right, and we see that with the obesity. Is the larger people and they live less long lives,
like a direct.
And we see that as insulin resistance, and we see as hypertension, coronary artery disease. Well, I think that's epigenetic modification. It's a stressful environment that's causing us to become larger for gain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
He was able to complete like what would normally take well, first of all, you can't do that on humans, right? But to fast forward through generations of reproduction in cats, you can do that in probably a matter of years. Where to watch that on the human level, as we're literally witnessing, it's been 70 years, 80 years to watch.
Well, and we're using companion dogs now, right? So there's a big project called the Dog Aging Study. It's about 50,000 dogs, and in different groups doing lots of measurements. My dog is in this group, and every year I have to send in vet records and actually test my dog's cognitive function, which is fascinating to do. So it's like, okay, here's the food. I'm gonna count to 30. You remember where it is? Yeah. My dog's not declining, right?
That's wild.
But it's keeping track. But my dog's a Great Dane, one of the largest dog breeds, and she's gonna live 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that's so she's
Their
an
life
important dog, right?
Mhm.
So the advantage of studying dogs, just like cats, again, is we can actually get information, and my dog is in my environment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Directly in my environment. Same fire retardant, same.
So same idea. Is that also
Yep.
why generally we see like cats and dogs getting like these weird cancers that debatably weren't theirs because we're also the ones feeding them like these manufactured foods?
It's like one of the leading types of cancer in Nebraska is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? And it's like, why is that? It's in the water. What's the leading cause of death for dogs in Nebraska? It's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow. Yeah.
So
the writing's fairly well on the wall.
So we should learn. We should actually do a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma study in dogs in Nebraska.
Yeah.
To understand that. I mean, it's just a little aside. I mean, I went to medical school in Nebraska, but if you want the variations of lymphomas, you send it to Nebraska.
Interesting.
And the pathologists there are specialists in lymphoma.
For sure, because it's like all they see.
It's what they have, and so something's going on there.
Yeah. So don't live in Nebraska.
Well, it speaks to the environment. It speaks to our niche.
It show that quite well.
Environmental causes of our illness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean, I also saw that there was a documentary on all the centenarians, the people who live over 100. There's a story about the guy who had cancer here in the U.S. was like, I'm going to go live with my family in Italy. Moves to Italy, lives the Italy life, and literally like cancer went away. He lived like decades more. And it's just like, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting for sure. Okay, let's go back to the PFAS and everything. We now know that there's a measurable test. You can tell me if you were to take my blood, do the test, here's how much you have in your blood.
Yeah.
You realize like, Clayton, you're over 20. You have too much.
Yeah.
What do I do about it?
So identify the sources, filter your water, carbon filter.
I do want to ask about that. I'll come back to the question though. Filter?
But also really I put you on cholestyramine.
And what is that? Is that a pill? Is that a powder? Is that a drink?
So this is a powder that you mix with water. Its technical name is it's an ion exchange resin. It's a very interesting type of molecule. They have pill forms, cholecystyrene and cholestyramine. So you can take pill, and I have some patients take that. And if you do have PFAS poisoning or brominated fire retardant, call me. Right?
Yeah.
I can do phone consults. I'm happy. The safe medicine is FDA approved. It was FDA approved to lower cholesterol, hyperlipidemia. And so you can, it's a nice thing about medicines. And I use herbs, use other things, use breathing for blood, do lots of things in addition to medicine. Medicine's many times not the only way, but sometimes it is the only way. Right? So, it depends.
Yeah, there's
right?
natural ways to do certain things, and sometimes you need the big guns.
But we have, if you have pneumonia, right, get an antibiotic for that pneumonia.
Yeah.
Right? Meningitis, bacterial meningitis, get the right treatment for that, right? So medicine is very powerful, and the FDA has approved it, and that is a debatable process on how it does, but generally it's a good process, right? It's saying, look, what does this do? How you manufactured it? How much? What's the dosing? Something we call pharmacokinetics, right? So we actually have data on, hey, you take this much this way, what happens in the body?
Yeah.
Just really good information to know. One of the drawbacks of these medicines is they will bind to other drugs, 140 other drugs it'll bind to.
So if I was taking cholestyramine and taking one of these other drugs, there may be interactions? Correct.
It would remove it.
Oh, like it would clear that drug?
It would clear out that drug.
Gotcha.
All right. At the same time, it would bind to it. So you have to sort of stage, take cholestyramine on an empty stomach and wait an hour and then take your other medicines.
Okay.
Right.
Am I taking cholestyramine forever? Am I taking it for a bout like an antibiotic would?
No, well, so it's interesting. And again, in the PowerPoint, there was a study done in Australian firefighters, and they actually have kinetic data that show these were men and women who had elevated levels of these PFAS chemicals, and they took cholestyramine for like up to 400 days.
which is over a year.
More than a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they showed is the levels went down fastest initially, right? So they dropped by half in the first 3 months.
Wow.
Okay. And these were not stringent cholestyramine drinkers, right? They were taking it. And we usually prescribe it once a day, but I think of a dose as a container, right? It comes as a powder. It looks like Gatorade, right? Kind of tastes like Gatorade. There's
That's nice, a little tasty.
A lemon, orange flavor. The new formulation dissolves more easily than the older formulations, which tend to be clumpy. People who don't mix it with enough water or juice, it comes out very much like a slurry and gunky.
Gotcha.
So you need to take it with water, right? And I take mine, and I think I love that it's binding these things, and I'm going to poop them out.
Yeah.
So the cholestyramine is a very long chain molecule that has a charge, an anion charge on it that will bind to other opposite charges, and it will bind fat soluble things. So it binds fats, right? So it binds these chemicals, and you poop them out. And I did in a little work in my office before COVID, right? COVID did very disruptive, fair to say, for the world. But I took 10 patients. We measured their levels. The two highest patients, one patient had 10 times the average level. The next patient had 4 times the average level of the 10 patients. And I gave them cholestyramine, the highest level. And we were measuring brominated fire retardants. And in 4 months, it dropped at 90%, taking it every day. And I measured the patient's cognitive function, and they were 22%, had 22% better memory.
Which I do want to have you on a future podcast to talk specifically about cognitive function.
Sure.
I enjoy your ability to measure cognitive function instead of he's smart, that person's not. To actually put measurements to it.
Yeah.
But that's wild that not only, it would track, right, with everything you're saying. When you clear out these toxins from the blood, the cognitive function is ability to go up.
It's not, we would, what I would tell you is, again, in those 7 studies, they were really seeing if they could be, remove them or not remove them, how much they were removed, how fast they were removed, what it took to remove them. Fair, important information. Really, the next question is, okay, does it really matter?
Does it change their life?
Right,
yeah.
Right. And my other patient with the 4 times the average amount, her period was every 35 days. So she had PCOS, and when she took the cholestyramine, it became regular, 28 days. And I would argue that it was removing the brominated fire retardants, probably other things. Did it have effect? It had a huge effect.
Absolutely.
Was it acting to remove an actual endocrine disruptor? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the next level of study is to use these medicines on exposed populations and actually demonstrate testosterone changes, hormone changes, thyroid changes, cognitive function changes.
Yeah. So to help finish today out and give people tactful takeaways, should everybody listening just go get this thing tested? Go get, I don't remember what you said, they're specifically testing in the blood, but should everybody get this? What would be the next step of, while you've piqued my interest and I want to know if I'm suffering from something?
There's groups of people I think should be tested.
Who would those be?
So those are exposed populations, like firefighters, right? Manufacturers in different companies. And I go through that also in my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So manufacturers and users of these chemicals should be tested. People that live around maybe military bases should be tested.
Okay.
Maybe people who are around a lot of fire retardants, like the military, because they're in equipment that is needs to not blow up and burn.
Yeah, that should almost be like a standard of care for those individuals.
And then, so that group. I think women of childbearing age, right?
Should just almost proactively go get a check.
18 to 40, right? And you're going to have, go get tested and then consider taking a course of this, maybe for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
To lower these chemicals, because lowering them means you won't pass them on.
For sure.
All right.
And or
right.
you have a better chance of conceiving a child healthily.
Right. Yeah. There was a group of farmers in Northern Europe that were dealing with this leachate and distributing it around, and they had high levels. And they and this was an important study. They were the first large study, matched controls, crossover trial with a washout that clearly demonstrated, and they took cholestyramine 3 times a day for 12 weeks.
It's like a triple dose.
Yeah, so a huge amount. And they lowered their levels 60%.
Wow, yeah.
So they had high levels, and these are blood levels. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I would say that group, right? So I think people who have elevated liver enzymes, obese people, men with low testosterone, I would put that group in there too.
Another question, you said it can kind of help with cholesterol.
Yep.
Will it have effect on cholesterol as well?
So let's say you have let's just say you have high cholesterol. Let's say you have insulin resistance, and you're like, and their doctor, what can you do? I'm like, well, I can put you on cholestyramine, and it will lower your triglycerides. It will lower them by half. Let's say you have pancreatitis, and you're like, oh, okay, you go from 700 to 200. That's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we use that as a medicine all the time. Let's say you're insulin resistant, your hemoglobin A1C is 9. It'll go to 7.
Dang.
Right? So it will lower it on average, 2. So that's pretty fascinating. So
is it being used that often for those though?
I use it a lot in my patients for their hypercholesterolemia and for their insulin resistance.
And is that going, if you're using it for that, is that...
It's approved by the FDA. I'm just being a good doctor.
Yeah, no, and the reason I ask is selfish. I actually found out I have high cholesterol. I lost 20 pounds. I've always lived what I would say is a healthy lifestyle, but took it more serious, lost 20 pounds, continue to do cardio, and cholesterol stayed the exact same. So if I came to you, decided to go ahead and go on cholestyramine, do I take it indefinitely, or is that another, like you take a tub and then you may not have to take it again for cholesterol?
So I have not found that to be the case.
Okay, it may be it's constant,
and because it will also remove and abstract the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, and K.
Okay,
right. We need, you have to take that in addition. So you need to replete. And I don't want people taking something like this forever or constantly. I think there's going to be too much repletion of things.
Yeah, because the trade-off of it getting rid of the bad stuff is it does get rid of some good stuff.
Correct. So I have people pulse it, and I'd like them to take 1 or 2 or 3 containers a year. I do have some patients that have hyperlipidemia of genetic causes, and I pay attention to them. And we do natural things, and if we need to use a medicine, we carefully choose that medicine.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, I'll put all your contact stuff in the show notes for people to reach out to you. The last couple of questions that I want to ask, it's one question, but 2 topics. You talk about filtering.
Oh, yeah.
My fridge has a filter. Is that good enough? How do I know it's good enough? What am I looking for on like house air filter and like fridge or water filter to know that I'm getting rid of these things?
So I believe in carbon filters, and I'm not a reverse osmosis person because I think we get rid of too much when we do
all
that.
The minerals is what I've heard.
We need the minerals. We need them. We need the calcium and magnesium. And that may be a component of bottled water. There's a lot of things wrong with bottled water. I like that it's portable and it's glycemic load zip. That can be, if you're dehydrated, be life-saving. Get that, but I don't like the plastic. Don't like the environmental concern. Don't like many of the bisphenol A's and microplastics. Those are fair concerns. Glass, okay, that's fair. Glass SN, Pellegrino water, reasonable. Recommend that a great deal. For the question of your filter, probably okay.
Yeah.
Right. The pure water filters that you can get on your tap water, you just screw on for $30 and you change the filter occasionally. I like carbon filters because the things that are the pesticides and the metals will be really abstracted by them, and they'll lower their concentrations 1,000-fold.
Wow, yeah.
Pretty significant. I have sort of an under the sink larger canister filter that I change out every 6 months.
Okay.
it's just a larger system, and I have a water filter on my shower water, and what you'll feel is amazing difference. And you're like, what was I washing in? And you won't have the scum on your shower, so the cleaning is easier.
That will be building up.
Yeah, because so that's the other component of water, and your cooking water clearly should be from the sink and filtered as well.
And then any specific things on air filters before we finish out?
Air filters I know less of.
Okay.
Their air filters come as something called MERV.
Yeah.
And so I put too high on MERV, and I had problems with my HVAC system.
Yeah.
In Nebraska in the winter. Like, what? There are different qualities of air filters. If people are having allergens, you should really get an allergen filter.
Gotcha. Sounds good. One curveball of a question that I had one listener say that she wants me to continue asking everybody.
Okay.
What is your favorite junk food?
My favorite junk food.
Ignore the last hour that we've talked and just tell me what you like that's tasty. Other than microwave popcorn.
So, I'm going to do a big shout out to Brahms Burgers and Brahms Ice Cream. And I guess their burger is beautiful and fabulous, double cheeseburger, excessive. But if that's what I'm going to have, I'm going to have that. Their ice cream, I tested their glycemic load on myself. It wasn't very high.
Nice.
Right? It wasn't soft serve. Ice cream I really responded high glycemic load. So I subscribed to, using a continuous glucose monitor to find out what food you respond to. So Brahms is my thing.
Flavor of ice cream?
They have a strawberry, homemade strawberry. And I think that's actually what they call it, that is out of this world.
Oh, it's amazing to taste. Yeah. Like there's legit pieces of great strawberry in it.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like ice cream.
Yeah.
It's like ice cream.
Yeah, it's great.
So
that's awesome.
I don't know if that's so bad. I probably wouldn't call it junk food, honestly. Right?
Well, you heard it here. It's doctor recommended and not technically ice cream. So is there anything else that you would like to leave the listeners with?
A lot of disease is environmental, right? I got into this, dementia is 95% environmental, cancer 70% environment. The other component of it is of the environment is our psychological stress, and it has to do with some really interesting work. It sort of funnels to the mitochondria. So we integrate cortisol effects through receptor function in the mitochondria. And Doug Wallace at Children's Hospital Philadelphia, greatest mitochondriologist alive, I'll give a shout out to him, done a lot of work. It really shows that stress and chemicals, which are very different things. We don't think, here's chemicals, they're molecules. Stress is ephemeral, right? And, in our practice, with EEG and QEEG, we're able to measure heart rate variability, begins to measure effects of stress.
Yeah.
So we're beginning to have that integration, and they're synergistic. Also, this is from Theo Colburn's Our Stolen Future. There's a chapter in which they had mice, and they ran a maze, and then they exposed the mice to like a stand-up owl, stress, and they didn't do as well. Then they had the mice run a maze, no owl, and they had a chemical noxious odor. Didn't do as well. Then they combined the two. Really super worse. It was synergistically bad.
Yeah, 1 + 1 = 3 on how much it took away from
Correct. And you have to be able to offer an explanation. They're all found in mitochondria. It's the mouse was able, and we are able to deal with a certain load. But at some point we can't. And so we have this effect.
For sure.
Right. So those are really important concepts, I think. But I saw a patient before I came. She was doing neurofeedback with my wife. doing diet things, doing the supplement things, doing the medicine things, really getting a good result. Because it took everything to get there.
Yeah, I've seen that for sure. Well, cool. Like I said, I'll have you on again to talk about cognitive stuff, because I think a lot of people here not only want to heal the bad, but they want to performance enhance of some sort. And so we'll have you back on for that. And I also want to have a talk with your wife as well with the neurofeedback stuff. So I'm glad you dropped that. Everybody listening, thank you so much for listening. Please share this if you know anybody in your life that needs it. If you want to reach out to Dr. Seberger, all the contact info will be down below. Other than that, I hope you learned how to heal without harm.